and I hope everybody who was here before enjoyed their lunch. We're going to get started with our last two presentations, and I'd like to present to you Mr. WTaylor.
Hello everyone, my name is WTaylor for those who don't know me, and this is my senior presentation. And my topic is the effects of being in a church community, specific a Protestant, non-denominational Christian church. So one day, this is how I came up with my topic. One day I was standing in the pews just at my church, just listening to the pastor do his sermon, and I began to wonder, could I do that? Because I had 2 or 3 years of public speaking experience. I've done theater before, and I was wondering, like, if I was to stand up on that stage and I had what notes he had, could I give that sermon as good as he could? And so I asked my girlfriend, my family, I was like, do you guys think I could do that? And they were like, yeah, you'd be really good at it. And up until this point, I'd always heard of this senior presentation, and I was planning on doing it with electrical engineering, mathematics, something like that, because I'm very mathematical, very engineering, and that's always what I wanted to do until this point in, I believe it was August of 2016. And in September of 2016, I called the church, the very same church, and I called them and I said, would I be able to get an internship? And they were very accepting. They said, yes, just come in. You can shadow the pastor. I explained to them what the project was, and they were very accepting. And I actually got to shadow the lead pastor of the church, who I will show in just a minute. The burning question is what it's called. So my question was, how does being in a church community affect the people that go to that church, whether it be in their family, their community, brothers, sisters, each other? What are the effects of being in a church community? So for every person, not one specific group of people, just anybody that goes to the church, how does anybody that goes, how are they affected? I know I was dreading this slide. This was at William and Monroe High School, my church, so don't knock my grade to that. Being at Madison. My mentor, lead pastor Adam Schwank. He was very accepting. He took me under his wing. Got to follow along behind him on his Sunday morning activities and throughout the week. Which thought of this, I thought, what a pastor does. They write a sermon Friday night, practice it Saturday during the day, and then Sunday morning they get up, give it, and then the rest of the week they have off. But I actually learned through my internship that they are constantly in meetings, meeting with people, going to hospitals to pray for people, and they're constantly a huge influence in the community. So this is the church that I did it at. It's called Legacy Church, and I was with one other intern, and I really liked having another intern that was my age and in a similar situation, because we could kind of talk and we could compare what we were doing, where we came from, like what our backgrounds were, and we could really relate to each other. And so what I did for my internship, like specifically, is I would shadow the pastor, and then on Thursdays usually we would have a meeting about what's going on in the church, what the church is planning on doing, like outside, like Sunday mornings, about what Adam did during the week and what the plans for the church were. So I really got to learn the insides and outsides of church and how everything really came together. And this is a picture of me and Adam. That one's me. That one's Adam. in front of the signs that at church. And for my community service, I was originally planning on building a website for a local church that lived close to my house. But as that grew on, this church is so small that they really didn't have anyone to maintain the website. So I came to Miss Wilson and I said, what is something that I could do? And she brought up teaching. like teaching like Sunday mornings, and I realized that for the past like month, fourth and fifth graders, about every other week, every couple weeks, I would teach the fourth and fifth graders in their Sunday school. I would lead them through activities and reading out of the Bible, and I would help them along in the same way that I would help all the grown-ups. And I was like, Miss Wilson, I've already been doing that. Could I do that as my community service? And she said, yeah, that's completely different from the whole internship and shadowing thing. So I really tried to separate the two of them, because there would be Sundays where I would follow closely along behind Adam, and I would do everything up until from the church, since it was at William Monroe High School, is a mobile church. So on Sunday mornings, we had to set everything up. We had to put the curtains along. We had to set all the signs up. We had to get everything ready for the day. So I would do everything from that, following along right behind Adam until he had to go on stage and then obviously sit in the audience and watch. But for my community service, what I would do, certain Sunday mornings, I would stand up in front of the fourth and fifth graders, and for about an hour-ish, I would help them along. We would read, and we would really engage with one another. And the legacy, ironically, the name of the church, but the legacy of my community service, I hope to be that the kids that I would help teach would learn a little bit about the Bible, whether they wanted to take further steps with their faith, or if they maybe didn't believe in it so much and they wanted to backstep and kind of see where they stood. I've really helped to try to help those kids identify where they really stood with their religion, with their faith. So I know the number one rule of presenting, don't read from the screen. So I'm going to read from the screen. This is just a diagram. Guy that was stressed out, just type stress is something like that into Google. This came up. And I realized this physically, weightlifting, girls, technology, math, your car, the newspaper, some pictures appears to be, work, school, just confused, and time. Now, all these things are physical. So one thing that I found that was significant about my internship is that my internship and my community service, the whole project in general, is that it really focused on your mental health, the mentality of being in a church community. And that's what my research really showed in my research paper, is that being in this church community surrounded by people that were in the same place as you are, doing the same things, maybe they've been through some rough times, all come together at this one group, it had a positive effect on the children, especially because they would learn from their older siblings and from the parents, and on the adults because they were surrounded by people. Maybe they felt alone, but coming to church on Sunday, they were surrounded by people in a similar situation as they are, all doing the same thing, and they all had one thing in common, and that was their religion. And that's one thing that we all have to decide whether that is to pursue a religion, to not. But that's one thing about religion, is it like demands an answer. You either follow this religion or you don't. And that's one thing that I found that was significant about my project, is that it really focused on the mentality of people, whereas other presentations and other topics may have focused more on your physical being and what you would do on a day-to-day basis in another job. So, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom is a quote by Aristotle. So this, in this project, I really learned that being in a church community really made me feel at home. It really made me feel loved and accepted, no matter what bad things I had done before or planned. We all have different lives, but being in a church community really made me feel loved, and it really made me think that maybe I could be a pastor one day, and that really interested me because it was so completely different from everything that I had ever thought that I could be or that I wanted to do. So my future plans, I plan to go to Piedmont, Virginia Community College in the fall 17, spring 18 semester. Um, and then after that, I hope to transfer to Liberty University and hopefully pursue a career in pastoral leadership, come back to a small town like Madison or Orange or one of the towns like this, and hopefully start a church, take over a church, something along those lines. Um, but if there's one thing that I've learned from this project is that you never really know what the future holds. It could be completely different from what you think. You could have one straight plan, and then um, the next day it's completely different because of just one simple thing that happened. Advice for rising seniors. As everyone else has said, don't procrastinate and really find something that you really are passionate about and set a schedule. And like I said, having another intern along with me really helped me to feel like accepted and like I really could learn something and I really could do something about with my project. And if I could say one thing, it would be really find something that you really like and you could set a schedule for it. Because like I said, on Sundays I would have it, Thursdays, and it was every single time I could always count on it. It was never maybe I could come in this day, I could come that day. It was always a set schedule, and I really, really, really looked forward to it every time that I would do it. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. Are there any questions? Yes.
If you were to go back and redo this senior presentation, this senior project, what would you do differently, or how can you improve on what you've done so far?
What would I do differently? I would definitely have taken more pictures. I just recently, I've only done my community service 3 or 4 times, and I really wasn't planning on doing it, so I didn't really take any pictures of my community service, and I only had 1 or 2 pictures, so I really would take more pictures, and I think that's about all that I would do differently because I really, really enjoyed this senior project, and I really enjoyed the topic. My mentor was really accepting, and the whole project was just really eye-opening.
Wyatt, one of the things you said in your presentation was that people make the decision, either I am going to be in a church community or I'm not going to be. Either you do or you don't. And you read articles today about the decline in church membership, perhaps throughout the United States, I'm not sure. What would you do potentially as a pastor, or what advice would you give to today's pastors, what they could do to increase the interest of people in our country in being part of the church community?
A lot of pastors fall into the false perception that your congregation is everything. The amount of people that you have is what's really important. But at the end of the day, for these pastors, that's not really important. It's not really what the church embodies, or not what it should embody. It should embody what the religion specifically is about. And for the pastors that think that their numbers are everything, they will often try to do things that they think will bring more people in, but at the end of the day, that is ultimately unbeatable. So if they would stick to what the religion ultimately believes, then I believe that they would have a better impact on the people that are in the church. Thanks.
Well, Wyatt, you said that your eyes were opened a lot about what a preacher does. What would you say is either the most interesting or the most surprising thing you learned?
A few interesting things. That a church can have such an effect on the people in the church and the community as a whole, and that it can really bring people together in ways that you might not expect. For example, I never really went to a church consistently before I joined Legacy Church, but after I've joined, I've really felt connected to the people that are in the church, and we've all really can come together on a Sunday or whatever day it may be and really practice our religion in healthy ways with each other to support us and to help us along. It's not so much as following a rule book, like there's a large stereotype that would be that a lot of religions are is following a rule book, do this, do that, and you can get to heaven. That's not what I have learned through this. It was about accepting each other and helping each other along because at the end of the day, for the people in these Christian churches, their goal is not to change the person. It's to bring them in and allow them to change themselves and to be changed.
Did you find disadvantages to the traveling church?
The church did, we have to set up in the morning, so if people got there late or if we didn't have enough volunteers at the time, we had to depend on the people in the church. And luckily for us, we had really dependable people, really trustworthy people that we could count on every day to be there on time to help us set up and after church to help us tear down the stuff that. But if we didn't have such if we had like a very small congregation of people, that especially if they weren't so accountable to help us set up, then it would have been a lot harder to get set up in the mornings, and people would have had to chip in a lot more than they did. Any other questions?
Could you say something about your research and around this question of what are the effects of being in a church community? Did you do any, sociological, psychological, ethical, political studies of how being engaged with the church affects people's behavior?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two different types of churches. There are those that are very accepting, like I already described, very accepting, very loving, and there are those that want you to follow a rule book. They want the highest numbers that they can get, and those churches I have discovered are very unhealthy towards the people because they're very critical of everything that the people do. At the hand of the church-like legacy that is very accepting, very loving. I researched in a few different ways. I did community, family as a whole, siblings, and parents, I believe, like parents to children. And in all those ways, I found that it healthily benefited the people that were in those relationships. So the family was brought closer together. The siblings, they could rely on each other a little bit more. The community was really brought together in ways that you can't really do without religion, because the largest group that people fit in this country is religion. There are more people that identify as the same religion than there are that fit into any other group. So I found that it really brings the community together. It really brings family together. It really brings marriages together. As long as it is healthy and mutual, then I found that it's very healthy and beneficial for all parties.